All right. Thank you very much, Liza. So how many of you have ever considered where the Wabash River here originates, or the impact it even has on bodies of water downstream? Our next speaker is the Director of Watershed Projects at the Wabash River Enhancement Corporation and currently serves as the President of the Indiana Lakes Management Society. To share some of the positive impacts that your neighbors are having on the Wabash River and how you too can become a good river neighbor, please welcome to the stage Miss Sara Peel.
If you visited the Wabash River recently, you may be surprised that historically you could see the bottom. That if you waded into the river, you actually could see your toes. But that's where the name Wabash originated, from the Miami Indian word Wabashiki, which means water over white rocks. And it's named for the crystal clear waters of the Wabash River flowing over white limestone in Huntington County, about 50 river miles east of here. But if you've been to the Wabash River recently, you know it looks more like this, brown from the sediment and the algae which it carries every day. In order to understand a little bit more about why we've gotten here, you need to know a little bit more about the Wabash River. Here we are in Greater Lafayette, in Star City, as represented by the yellow star. But the Wabash River doesn't start here. In fact, it originates in Ohio, about 200 river miles east of here. And it flows downstream, picking up water from the White River, before flowing into the Ohio and then into the Mississippi. In fact, the Wabash River drains about 2/3 of the state of Indiana. It's represented on this map in pink. And with that representation comes a lot of sediment and nutrients. And we can see that in this sediment plume that we see in the Gulf of Mexico. And this actually forms a hypoxic zone, or a dead zone within the Gulf. No fish, no bugs, no bacteria. Literally dead, just as it sounds. So how did we get to this point? Historically, Indiana was forested, wetland, or prairie. And every time it rained, water would fall on these natural landscapes, get percolated into the soil, and then slowly move into our groundwater system. Today, it looks a little bit different. Every time water falls on a rooftop, a roadway, a driveway, parking lot, or even our nearly impervious grass, it carries nutrients and sediment into the Wabash River. Additionally, in our agricultural areas, water falls on our open soil, picking up nutrients and sediment and carrying them into an adjacent stream or into the Wabash River. And it's our job to try to slow these pollutants, slow the flow of water, and keep the sediment and nutrients on the land rather than in the river. So let me introduce you to a few great river neighbors who are doing their part to make a change on behalf of the Wabash River. Let me introduce you to Josh. He and his family farm 10,000 acres here within Tippecanoe County, all flowing into the Wabash River. Annually, they use a combination of no-till and cover crops to retain their soil on their site. You can see the no-till farming in the corn stalks that remain in each of their fields. These stalks hold the soil in place, retaining nutrients and sediment, and keeping them in place for the spring planting. Additionally, they plant cover crops in the fall, and you see those as the green between the rows. The cover crops also retain soil moisture, reduce the amount of nutrients needed in the spring, and collectively they're also not only impacting their impacts on the Wabash River, but they're also improving their bottom line. So they're getting better yield with better farming practices. Additionally, Josh and his family implemented 2 of the state's first bioreactors. Once these pits are completed, they'll be filled with the wood chips you see around them, and tile drainage from their agricultural fields will be run into these. In fact, they'll treat about 200 acres each and remove all the nitrogen and turning it into atmospheric nitrogen, so it will go from water into gas. In total, they'll remove about half the nitrogen within each bioreactor, making Josh a great river neighbor. The city of Lafayette is also getting into the act. They've converted historic brick streets downtown into this green machine. This pavement literally soaks up the water every time it falls on it. So how did they make this happen? They removed the historic bricks, separated the stormwater and wastewater pipes underneath, and converted and replaced it with these bricks that literally love water. And this fire truck dumped about 3,000 gallons of water on this pavement about 2 minutes before this photo was taken, and you see just a small puddle behind it, literally soaking up about 4 million gallons of stormwater annually. As they slow the water, they'll actually keep sediment and nutrients out of the Wabash River with just this one great project, making the city of Lafayette a great river neighbor. Alcoa, one of our industries, is also getting into the act. They converted their 30-acre parking lot from gray into green. This schematic shows you how they took each of their parking spaces, replaced them with traditional asphalt, which dumps then into pavement that literally loves water. That water then goes into these tree-lined swales, which carries water then around the outside of the basins that you see on the edges of the drawing. In total, they're retaining nearly 1.5 million gallons of water and reducing their impact on the Wabash River. Oakland High School students are also getting into the act. Following a typical rain, they identified that water would race across their parking lots and flow into adjacent storm drains. And any water that drained towards the school would actually form a moat around their school, keeping them inside the building for 2 to 3 days following a rain event. In an effort to identify some solutions, they worked with Purdue University students and designed a series of practices. They installed 6 trees, planted a native planting area, and then also planted these 2 rain gardens. They're designed to hold water for about 24 hours, and each of the gardens is planted with native plants, which you see the students working with here. They describe the event as having fun with nature and also reduced their impact by nearly 1 million gallons. If you're thinking, that's a little bit big for me, I want to start small, let me introduce you to Anna and her beautiful rain barrel. She and nearly 1,000 of her friends and neighbors throughout Greater Lafayette have installed a rain barrel. And while each of these barrels have minimal impact themselves, collectively, they're retaining nearly 1.5 million gallons of stormwater. They're inexpensive and easy to use, and we'd be happy to help you get started. Each and every one of us has the opportunity to be a great river neighbor. And each star on this map represents a project where someone installed a rain garden, a porous pavement project, where they're planting cover crops or using no-till farming, or more importantly, they've done something small like planting a rain garden, native plants, or using a rain barrel. And I challenge each of you to identify a way that you can be a great river neighbor.